My name is Zhang, a PhD candidate from the University of Melbourne. Today, I will present a paper titled Approximate Range Thresholding. In this work, we studied a very interesting type of queries in the stock trading system scenario. We all want to earn money from stock trading. So some people may spend their all day monitoring the transaction record of some stock to check the selling price and the number of shares of the tradings. That is because if there are a number of tradings with some abnormal or we say with some sensitive price range happening, they may regard it as a strong signal to speculate either the price of the stock will rise or fall in the future. So they may hope to receive an alarm, like in this example, when in total 1,000 shares of Apple stock are sold at prices within 140 to 150. And with such a notification, they can take corresponding actions timely, like selling or buying the Apple stock. Furthermore, if you want to take more information into account, you can easily extend these kind of queries into a multidimensional case, like in this example. Besides the selling price, it could also take into account the price of another stock when the transaction happens. Actually, we can define these kind of queries formally into the range thresholding problem. In the range thresholding problem, each of the transaction record is formalized as an element. It consists of two fields, a d-dimensional point called value and a positive integer called weight. In our example, they correspond to the selling price and the number of shares of the transaction respectively. And we formalize the sequence of elements as a stream. In our problem, especially we suppose that at each time step, only one element arrives. And the query is composed of two fields, the range and the threshold. The range in our one-dimensional example is the interval of the sensitive price. And for multi-dimensional cases, the interval will become a d-dimensional axis parallel rectangular range. And the total number of shares will act as the threshold, which is a positive integer. The time point that we want to receive the notification is called maturity moment. Formally speaking, we need to track the weighted sum of the elements that arrives after Q and with value fall in the range of Q. The first time step that the weighted sum exceeds the threshold is called the maturity moment. In practice scenario, we usually do not need to track the exact maturity moment for the query. We just want to receive notifications when the query is about to mature very soon. So we extend the maturity moment to a more generalized concept, the epsilon maturity period. It is a period start from the first time step that the weighted sum exceeds 1 minus epsilon times tau and ends with the maturity moment. This is a more generalized concept because even though you want to still track the exact maturity moment, you can set epsilon as a small enough value like 1 over tau to make the epsilon maturity period only contain one moment, which is the maturity moment. And the task of the range thresholding problem is to capture an arbitrary moment in the epsilon maturity period of the query. If there is only one query, this problem is quite easy. You can simply maintain a counter for the query, and every time a new element arrives, you need to check whether the value of the element falls in the range of the query. If so, you increase the counter by the weight of the element. When the counter exceeds the threshold for the first time, you report maturity. However, the challenge lies in supporting a large number of queries simultaneously. Suppose we have m queries and n elements in total. The aforementioned brute force algorithm will have the time complexity like this, m times n. That is because for each of the elements, you have to touch each of the query range one by one. A better solution is called stepping-based algorithms. You can maintain some data structure like R tree or sig interval tree for the query ranges. And when a new element comes, you can utilize such data structure to find all of the corresponding queries and increase their counters. Unfortunately, no matter which data structure you adopt, the time complexity will still contain a term like this, which is also a quadratic term. That is because in the worst case, for each of the query, you have to increase the counter for that query for tau max times. So all of the above algorithms cannot overcome the quadratic running time bounds. The state-of-the-art solution is called QGT algorithm. It is the first solution with a subquadratic time complexity. However, as you can see, the exponent of the log m term is d+1, which is already a large overhead when the dimension is 3 or larger. As we'll introduce shortly, our algorithm will improve the time complexity by roughly a logarithmic factor. We present some basic idea of QGT algorithm here. Instead of maintaining one counter for one query, QGT algorithm partitions the query into several subranges. And for each of the subrange, it maintains a counter to record the weighted sum of the elements that fall in the range. The benefit of doing so is that some subranges, like in this example, the blue block, can be shared by multiple queries. And increasing the counter for this subrange will contribute to multiple queries together. The maturity of the query can be tracked with the sum of the counters of these subranges. And to achieve this, QGT algorithm adopts the distributed tracking algorithm. Distributed tracking, we say DT for short, is a technique that helps to track when the sum of a set of counters reaches a certain threshold. However, if you simply run multiple DT instances separately, the overall running time will still be quadratic. The nice idea of QGT algorithm is to organize multiple DT instances in the same subrange together with heap structure. The drawback of doing so is that the heap structure will introduce a log m cost for each of the DT operation. To support query insertion, QGT algorithm utilize the standard logarithmic method, which will also introduce a log m factor for the element processing and query processing time. We summarize the limitations of QGT algorithm here. The utilization of heap structure and logarithmic method will introduce a log m overhead for the overall running time. At the same time, we also found that in practice, the space consumption of QGT algorithm is quite large. For example, it will run out of our 100 gigabyte memory for 2 million three-dimensional queries. As a comparison, our algorithm on the same dataset only uses 10 gigabyte memory to give the result within 3 hours. So we aim to design an algorithm that is fast and space efficient in practice with subquadratic theoretical bound. Now let me introduce our solution, which is called fast RTS. Generally speaking, comparing to QGT algorithm, our algorithm eliminates the heap structure with a novel bucketing technique and eliminates the logarithmic method with incremental segment tree. Our algorithm can achieve the following time complexity and space complexity. Here, the big N stands for the size of the universe on each of the dimensions. To make a comparison, we put the running time and space consumption of these two algorithms together here. As you can see, we improve the exponent term for the logarithmic factor from d+1 to d, but we increase the logarithmic term from log m to log of big N. You may be concerned that log of big N may be much larger than log of m in theory. Actually, in practice scenario, big N is usually not very large. Consider the stock trading scenario, the price range of a stock is usually bounded within millions of cents. And we also propose the two effective optimizations to reduce the dependency on big N in practice. According to the experiment, even big N is as large as a billion, which is quite near to the limit of a 32-bit integer. Our performance is still quite stable and outperforms the competitor by roughly an order of magnitude. First, we eliminate the heap with the bucketing technique. To achieve this, we propose a new type of DT algorithm, which is called power of 2 slash DT. And with the new type of DT, we can organize it with a linked list of buckets instead of using the heap structure. So each of the previous heap operation can be done in constant expected time. So we can reduce the logarithmic factor for the DT processing part. And to eliminate the logarithmic method, we utilize the incremental segment tree. The basic idea is to maintain a signal tree on the whole universe. And to reduce the space consumption, we only materialize the nodes touched by some alive queries. So as you can see, this structure can support query dynamic easily. Equipped with these two techniques, we can already achieve the theoretical bound as we introduced. However, that alone is not enough to make our algorithm run fast enough in practice. So we further propose the two powerful optimizations for faster RTS, which is called the range shrinking technique and the range counting technique. Both of them can reduce the actual running time and the peak memory usage in practice while retaining all of the theoretical bounds. The basic idea of the range shrinking technique is to extend the query range to its super range to get a super query. As you can see from the example, the subrange numbers of the super query is much smaller than the original one. So the cost for tracking the super query is significantly small. What's more, the original query never misses the maturity moment before its super query matures. So we can safely track the epsilon maturity period of the super query. One of the benefits is that we have a chance of early stop. That means when the super query reports maturity, we need to collect the precise counter sum of the original query. If we are lucky enough, we will find the original query is already epsilon matured. So we can just report maturity without running the DT instance for the original query. We only pay for a very low cost for this query. What's more, this technique can keep the DT instance small most of the time. And this will make the peak memory usage of each DT instance asynchronous. That means for each of the DT in practice, they usually do not achieve their maximal space at the same time. And we found some drawback from range shrinking technique. That is, we still need to materialize each of the original subrange of the original query. Otherwise, we will lose the precise counter information. So the range counting technique adopts the range tree to support precise counter collection. The benefits of doing so is that now we only need to materialize the nodes touched by the super query of the original query, which will reduce the space consumption in practice. We show some experiment results here. This is a three-dimensional synthetic data set. As you can see, the overall running time, our algorithm outperforms the competitor by roughly an order of magnitude. And as for the peak memory usage, our algorithm, even for 5 million queries, our algorithm only uses less than 20 gigabytes space to give the result. And this is a result for two-dimensional real stock trading data. As you can see, our algorithm still performs the best, both for running time and the memory usage. And that's all for the presentation. Thank you for listening.